Look, it's hard to know where to start with the story, I think. So probably with the fact that I moved to Yackandandah and met Diane through yoga.
Yes.
And we found that we instantly had a meeting of minds when it came to wacky ideas. So we used to throw a lot of wacky ideas around the place. And concurrent to that, I was on the parents group at the Yackandandah Primary School. And the Yackandandah Primary School used to do the Wodonga races. And when you say do the Wodonga races, they did the parking and ran a concession stand and made a lot of money out of it. And then a couple of years after we started at Yak Primary, the Wodonga races ceased that arrangement. And so the school was left with a fundraising hole. So Karen and I were on the parents group, and we had this fete, which was a lot of hard work. It didn't raise hardly any money, and the only thing that we thought was really good about it was the music and the food.
I came here in 92, I think, and somewhere along the line I met Kirsten, and then I met Di. I think I met Di Shepherd through Kirsten Coates. And somewhere along the line we just had this conversation about, wouldn't this be a great place to hold a folk festival? You know, that would be a cool thing to do. And I can't say that I can remember the exact moment when we had that conversation, but that was what we said. And somehow or other we ended up having a meeting. So I think we went to the Top Pub, is my memory of it, and with Kirsten and Di and Carlisle. We sat around, we talked about it. There was no committee at that stage. Obviously, there was no folk festival really, but
I started with the very first meeting of the folk festival, which was held in the Top Pub over a few beers in I can't even remember when it was now, but back in the late 90s. We came at it for different angles. There were 4 of us initially. I knew Kirsten through school. We were both on the parents group at school. So we were both into fundraising and doing all that sort of thing from a school perspective. Diane and Jeff I'd never met before, but I came to know them very, very well over the period of time. And I guess I went for different reasons. I wasn't really a music type person as such. I liked music, but I hadn't done the folk festivals. Like Jeff and Diane and Kirsten were very much went to folk festivals, knew their music, knew their performers. I was a bit of a folk festival virgin myself.
Some of us had been to folk festivals before, you know, like I'd been to Port Fairy a few years before coming here. Thought it was fabulous, had a great time. I wouldn't say that I was like a person who went to folk festivals all the time, but I'd been to that one.
I used to go with my family to the Port Fairy Folk Festival, and I had 4 little kids, drag everybody, put them all in the car, drive 12 hours down to Port Fairy and have a great weekend. But it was such a big deal, and I kept thinking, why do I have to go so far to go to a community music event where my family has a great time, everyone from the little one up to my age? And I said, this is ridiculous. Why can't we do something like this? And we talked about this. Kirsten and I talked about that there just wasn't enough happening culturally in our community to keep us engaged. And we had to keep going further afield to find things that kept us happy in this area.
We put an ad in the town newspaper for a meeting at the pub, and about 10 people turned up, all ready for a night out at the pub. And at the end of the meeting, we had a little list of people who wanted to put their names down to actually do something to start a folk festival, and there were no names on the list except for Jeff's and my name. So
good on Jeff, eh?
Good old Jeff. So about I reckon it was 3 days later.
Yeah, I think
we had a proper meeting then, didn't we?
We had a proper meeting. Well, we said, okay, now who are the people we really know want to do this? And it was you and I, Jeff, and so Karen was your secretary, was she, at the school? At school. Okay, and Karen. So the 4 of us met and we said, we're going to do this. Okay, this is our first meeting, and we took minutes, and you said, I'll be president. And Jeff said he'd do. Karen said she'd be secretary, and Jeff said he was vice president.
That's right.
And then,
what were you?
and then everyone said, "What about treasurer?"
Oh, treasurer. That's
And we all looked around, and there's only 4 of us. So I went, "Oh, and that's me. I must be the treasurer." And people laugh at that now, which I think is quite rude. So I was the first treasurer, and it was just by default because it was the last thing, and we all had to be something. So yeah, so that was the first committee meeting, and that was our first. They're our first office holders.
And it was pretty well 4 at every meeting, I think. After
Yep.
Oh, we did get a few ring-ins. We got Tom Miller came on and
Yep.
Greg Love came on.
Yep. Well, once we had office bearers, it looked serious, didn't it? It was going to happen.
And people knew that they could come on and not have to be an office bearer.
Yeah, we started 4 of us. There was another chap that represented the Indigo Shire, David Shermer. So he came in as well and provided the sort of council support, I guess, the rules, the regulations, what we can do, what we can't do. The others may correct me, but the figure of $2,000 sticks in my mind as our starting budget to provide performers. And from that, we planned our first folk festival. The others sort of tended to look more after the music side of things, and I got very much into the community side of it, getting the community involved. So we sent little letters out to all the community groups saying, hey, this is what we're doing. If you want to be involved, let us know. And we sort of looked at it from a food point of view, that they could provide food for this weekend. Stalls always selling food make a lot of money.
I remember either the first year or the second year, we had some market stalls and we had to clear the streets, and we sort of there were cars everywhere, and we thought, well, how are we going to do this? So Rod, who was the policeman at the time, was around, and so I talked to him about it. I got into the front seat of the police car with him, and we drove slowly down the main street, and he put his loudspeaker thing on, and and I got the microphone, and I just said, can you move your cars, please, because we've got this event happening. So that was funny. So there's some of the things that I remember about it. Yeah.
Kirsten often try and get a grant most years
Emphasis on that try.
for some sort of an event at the festival that was an artistic or musical. So those Friday night parades were always Kirsten's, getting the school involved, getting the kids all having a musical instrument, trying to get an artist who will go around beforehand, some sort of performer who would turn up a couple of weeks beforehand and go to all the local schools and teach music or teach some art thing, or like that was always really very important to you to have that happen. So yeah, we all really got to do what we wanted to do within our own little area under the auspice.
I was more interested in it as a means of getting outside money into the town, as I was a mum of 5 in my 30s then, and I had kids at the preschool, at the primary school, at the high school. They played tennis, they played netball, they were in the clubs, the scouts. Well, all these people were trying to raise money for their own organisations. And Yakandanda is a very small town, so we were all taking money from the same people, the parents usually, and the businesses. We're all having to dig into our pockets for different fundraisers continuously. And I guess I was interested in this whole concept of starting something that was going to bring outside money into the town so that we could fleece them, basically, to support all our groups and schools and all that. So I went from it from that perspective, and we had our first meeting and decided that we could do this, pull off this folk festival, and so we did. I suppose 15, 16 years later, it's still going.
It probably stems back to those early days in some ways, because I think, Kirsten, Di, Karen, and I guess myself and others as well were sort of always really conscious of getting different parts of the community to kind of participate and have kind of like buy-in, I suppose, to use a project management jargon or whatever, but into the whole thing. So the school pretty early on got on board with the markets and things like that, and the kindergarten was in there, and so there was always that, I think, right from pretty much from the start. Let's get, if you give everybody something to do and something to gain from doing it, fundraising or whatever, then you get everybody involved that way. So I think it was just a good, sound, sort of like a community development model, if you like.
So to some extent, the folk festival has been a really good breeding ground for people to see that they could get involved and do their own little, moving off into a community type event or community. It's showing people you can do it. Yeah. So I think it's been a really good, a good thing for the community to get people in and get them doing things.
Yeah, yeah.
From there, my main drive was community involvement, I guess. So those first few, I think we had animals. We had farmers bring in animals for petting zoos. We got the local churches involved, and on the Sunday morning of the festival we had a community service in the park, so we got the churches involved. The groups, the community groups like the CFA, the SES, they got involved raising funds. The schools got involved, and we ran markets, and it just became bigger than Ben-Hur, really.
Then we had a committee.
Finally.
Yeah.
A music selection committee.
Which was great. The music selection committee, we had, I think that was Sharon McCartney's idea of putting them all into yellow envelopes with their names of the artist and a number, and then she would have them all in an Excel sheet, and she's packed them into things of 10, and so the 10 of them would go off. We'd send them all off to, there's a group of probably about 6 people on the committee, selection committee, some in Albury, Jeff Green in Albury, who I never really came to a committee meeting. And they would listen to the music, and then they would give them a rate on it, or write a little comment, and eventually we'd get all the envelopes back together with everybody's comments on them, and just the small group would go through and look at the comments, and we just straight away go, no. The ones that had no on them, we wouldn't even bother listening again, because sometimes we'd have hundreds of... and we didn't want to have to listen to them all again. Yeah. So that was, that was an interesting...
I mean, I at one point it got up to 200 CD submissions. Yeah. So we were listening to 200, and it got very... And now I don't even know what it is now. It's probably hundreds and hundreds. So, it was a pretty big job. And originally the Music Selection Committee was a committee of 2, 3.
Yeah.
And... we made some pretty arbitrary choices there for a while.
Whoever applied.
First it was whoever applied got in. Whoever applied and were free got in.
Free? If you were free, that helped a lot.
If you had a nice CD cover, that helped.
Well, Trina Costin, she was one of our first.
If you were local, you got in.
If you were local, you absolutely got in, yeah.
I was only there for the first 5 before I moved away, and I was in the secretary's role for each one of those 5 years, and it was a gradual progression. But I can't speak for the last 10 years, but those first 5, it was actually quite astonishing how quickly it grew. And the sorts of performers, even in the first 5 years, the sorts of names we were drawing from overseas within such a short period of time were quite amazing.
There was always a bit of a debate. Every year you'd have a debate. How many people do you reckon we got? I don't know, 5,000, 10,000. Estimates varied. You'd know how many tickets you sold, obviously, but there was always the punters that would come out, especially on the Sunday, and you'd look up and down the street and it'd be chockers. It's been that way for quite a long time, and nobody really ever knew how many people there were, but always lots and lots of people.
The school was one of the main things for me, because I had so many children at the school, and fundraising is just this ongoing issue. And because we wanted to use the school grounds for food or for markets, for the children's activities, we really used the school grounds a lot. So we really, really wanted the school involved, and they were, and from what I understand, they've just become more and more involved over the years, and it's really become a big money spinner for them.
I mean, we certainly were the instigators, but if people hadn't come on board as they did, even just to do, Patton Bridge did this amazing sort of, he was quite good at strategically working out how we could set it up as a committee. So he had it written down. We'd already been working like this, really, but then he was the one who put it down on paper. That there was a couple of us at the top making the major decisions, and then we had this sort of like tiered thing of people could just do one particular thing and never even come to a folk festival committee meeting, but they could do their thing, and it was they get a ticket for it. So like Guy Kempshall Bell.
Yeah.
did our website and a lot of that sort of media thing, well, website really, and email, from the very beginning. Someone knew him and asked him, and I'd never met him. And I emailed him. I was constantly emailing him updates for the website and who the new performers were. I don't reckon I met Guy for 4 years.
Yeah.
He didn't come to a folk festival meeting for 4 years. Yet he was just able to, at home, do what he had to do.
And a major player, really.
A major
setting
player.
that stuff up
Yeah.
was another big leap forward
Yeah.
for us. So,
And so when I eventually first met him, it was just like, oh my God! All these years of like us emailing back and forth.
Yeah, having the idea, and then with those other people being able to develop the idea into, you know, reality, and learning probably a whole lot of things along the way about how to do that, and, you know, that world of folk music, and just meeting a lot of people that, like I said, maybe I wouldn't have otherwise met around the town, just through being involved that way. It's been really satisfying, and probably just the overall way that I think that it shapes the town and the kind of place that it is now, and, you know, I'm glad that I had some part in that as well. So.